Lynch with us from the NHS and Matt from Oxford Samaritans. Thank you for coming and being here this evening for our opening show of Dry at the Cornerstone Arts Centre, Didcot. Marion, tell us a bit about your relationship, NHS's relationship with Dry.
Thanks ever so much for inviting me and this opportunity to be part of the programmes once again. Part of my role in the NHS is to make sure that service users' voice and their views are heard and incorporated into how we design services. And that can be done in many ways, but one of the ways I've really noticed is if we harness the arts to do that. I visited Connie's Colander, one of the pieces that you did, because my clinical area is dementia, and I was really thrilled to see how people learnt from the play in terms of how to communicate with someone living with dementia. And from that, I thought there must be a way of harnessing human story theatre to harness human stories to influence services. So we moved on. One of my key areas when I was a public health specialist was in prevention and alcohol. And we get really het up with blaming other people, the youth, the vulnerable, when actually all of these conversations about who to blame are happening over a bottle of wine around a kitchen table of Middle England, middle class people. And it really brought to the fore that we need to do something that starts to break down that denial about whose issue it is and what interventions we need to do to address the alcoholism and rise in alcohol use and abuse in our country. So with a little bit of funding, a tiny bit of funding, we got this cunning idea together to write a play. And the content is truly the words of people who use services through working with Turning Point, and truly the words of health professionals through conversations with doctors and nurses. And the content is clinically sound because we've checked out the facts. But the programme isn't judgmental. And the play isn't judgmental.
There's laughs in it. I keep telling people that.
We have jokes, we have humour. The smiles are connecting to people's own lives and their own ways of living and their families.
Their own
experiences, absolutely. But then there's a message of actually, is this an issue? The evaluation of the programme has shown that people, once they've been to the play or heard about the play, and feel they have an issue, they refer themselves to services. And that's what we need to be doing with health systems, not lecturing people or leaving things alone because they're too difficult, but helping people recognise where they can do something about their own health in a different way.
Absolutely, and that's what we try to do through our plays at Human Story Theatre. We don't want to be preachy. We want to try to act as a catalyst to start people in communities, in the theatre, in the library, whatever, having those difficult conversations about really tricky things.
Yeah, it's the burning issues that no one else will talk about. We talk about them, and we talk about them in a way that then enables other people to talk about them, and then people to do something about it, be it domestic violence, relationships with older people living with dementia, isolation, cancer that can't be talked about, death. This one is about alcoholism hidden away, happening under our own noses in our own homes, but not being acknowledged. And fortunately, when we bring the arts into communities, we raise the curtain on those issues in a way that enables people to then say, actually, that's not someone else, I think that might be me.
Exactly, and one of the things that is as important to us, if not more so, than the play itself is the second part of a Human Story Theatre evening, which is the post-show Q&A, which we have after every single performance we do, alongside every production. And Matt, you've been with us for the last 3.5 years, since day one, since we started, coming along with your Samaritan hat on, to give your advice. You don't give advice, do you? No, I should know that, the amount of Q&As I've sat through. You are there to listen. So you listen to people in the audience, but you also do tell people about your service.
Yeah, we do. I mean, this is the fantastic thing about it, is that whatever the issue is, it's about people having a health problem, a health issue, so it's very real to them, and it comes alive in the theatre, and there's a story, and then people project themselves onto that story, or it touches something in their lives, and they talk about it. And of course, Samaritans is all about, the callers talk and we listen. And for me, the great thing about it is not only is it great drama, but it's also a real opportunity to say, if you've been affected by this, actually this is the sort of thing we can talk about. And if you think about a play like Dry, you've got the person who's drinking, you've got the daughter who's affected, you've got the wife who's affected. Each of those people would be a potential caller to Samaritans, and it really makes it come alive. Otherwise, it's very difficult for people to really imagine what it's like to pick up the phone and talk to another anonymous human being, a Samaritan. We talk about, we ask about suicide or explore suicidal thoughts and feelings, but actually anyone who's going through a difficult time wants to let off steam, call a Samaritan. So for me, I love being part of these Q&As because not only do I get a buzz off the play and the interaction, but it's also a great window with which to say Samaritans is relevant to you and what you're going through, irrespective of the subject matter of the play.
Yeah, and how many phone calls do you get that are linked or have something to do with alcohol?
Well, it's difficult to say because what I would say is that quite often people, when they're calling us, might be drinking to give themselves courage to call. I think people who are in quite a difficult place often self-medicate, so they may be drink, there may be drugs. Quite often, though, the problem drinking's in the background, as it were, and the reason why they're calling is X or Y. But sadly, we know that if people with long-term issues with alcohol addiction are at a higher rate or risk of suicide. So, while somebody may not phone up and say, "I'm having a problem with drinking," sometimes that comes out in there as well. But it's an issue. It's a huge societal issue. And like you're saying, it's not young people binge drinking. Actually, this is the relentless acceptability of 1-2 bottles of rather nice wine. They're enjoyed round a table like this, between a couple in midlife, growing up children, and it has implications both for mental health and for physical health. Cancers and those issues, and that's a great thing about the play, is it's not preachy, and it would be horrendous if it was, but actually it's a window into, I've seen the play a couple of times, and there are elements that really do sort of say, well, I've seen that.
And I can say this because I can't take credit for writing the play, but that's what I think Gay does so well, is that she thoroughly researches the topic matter by chatting with lots of people to collect human stories. We do what we say on the tin, and although it's not verbatim theatre, she takes aspects of all the real people, the real human stories that she's listened to over months, and puts those into her plays, which I think adds an extra element of reality to it.
And connectivity. I think the key for me is in the NHS we will collect people's views and thoughts and then put them into a policy brief or a report, and those sit somewhere, and people in positions of power will read them. Actually, those messages don't necessarily get through to as many people as we want. By putting exactly the same interviews or information into a different fora, we get the messages out to whole communities rather than just people around maybe a table.
The power of theatre. I'm biased, yes. I would say that, but yeah, and actually something that I'm often really surprised by and humbled by is the element of disclosure that the audience in the Q&A give sometimes, and sometimes they openly say that is they've spoken those words or told their story or thought, said they think they've got a problem with alcohol for the very first time. Yeah. And that's really quite powerful, and Gay and I are relieved and pleased to have experts on the panel to be able to be there to talk to them afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? Whenever you open up people about, when they start to open up, that there is that sort of, there's people on hand to sort of say, what do you want to talk about afterwards, or just say, this might be helpful to you, and give that, other people can give advice, and I'm sure, the NHS's role and organisations like Turning Point, they do give advice. That's their service.
Yeah.
I think the key for me is that we make this into a safe place to do that.
Absolutely.
As much as possible. So the play opens up people's thinking, and because of the trust that is built, because people feel that they're around the kitchen table as well, people feel able to then say something about their lives, and we make sure that they know that they are saying something, but then not too much. And so signposting to other services, or we're clinicians who are sitting at the Q&A, we know how to help people say more or help people say less. And that's crucial, because this has to be something that people then think, I'm glad I said something, and this is what I can do, rather than the opposite, when people go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just said that. So that's why the Q&A is crucial, and having the selection of services in the Q&A is crucial, local and national, and then information afterwards, and that's why it works.